Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at the Magic World Championship. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. That is Luis Scott Vargas. And boy, do we have a story brewing here, kiddos, because William Huey Jensen, 6-0. And, you know, you just noticed while taking a look at our matchups here, that puts him not just one win clear of the field, but actually two.
Yeah, he's the only 6-0, and the next best record is 4-2. His opponent, Brad Nelson, in fact, is 4-2. Huey's 2 wins ahead of the competition. If he wins this round, he'll remain 2 wins ahead of the competition. And he is on pace to lock up a slot well before anyone else even really can think about it.
That's right, and this is the last match of the day. So is Jensen going to finish 7-0 and complete the sweep against this insane field? Or will it be Brad Nelson with 4-color energy, improving his record to 5-2 and being the first person able to defeat Jensen? Let's find out right now. Looks like the players are all set to go. So the matchup, Luis, 4-color energy for Brad, teamer energy, so only 3 colors for Jensen. Pretty close deck list, all told.
These decks aren't very many cards apart. One of the biggest differences we noted was that Brad has additional threats in the form of the Scarab God and Chandra, Torch of Defiance. That's what the additional color really nets Brad, is the Scarab God, whereas William has more interaction. He's got 2 copies of Essence Scatter, a Commit to Memory, and a Confiscation Coup, all of which do a pretty good job of inserting some of Brad's bigger threats.
Yeah, like the Scarab God. All right, so let's see what happens here as the early turns are unfolding for us here. A Long Tusk Cub, though, for Brad Nelson is asking the first question, which is, Huey, do you have a way to kill it? He's passing the turn back.
Yeah, but William does have multiple copies of Harness Lightning in hand, so he is going to be able to take out Long Tusk Cub. That is one of the easiest ways to win this match, or really any match. Play a turn 2 Long Tusk Cub, have it survive, and that basically does the job.
Yeah, it often dies, but the times when it doesn't. Yowza. So Brad's kind of mapping out his turn here. He's got 1 energy in the bank thanks to that Ether Hub.
And Brad is probably not
make it 2.
Optimistic about this Cub surviving.
But Huey says, sure, you can have your extra energy. If you'd like to spend 2 of them, no problem. But the immediate follow-up play for Brad is a Whirler Virtuoso, Rogue Refiner? What is that?
Whirler Virtuoso, which unfortunately Ether Hub is Brad's only blue source, so he did have to lose an energy in playing that, which makes it a little less appealing than it would otherwise be. This matchup is so attrition-y that your energy count really matters, and having to spend energy on Ether Hubs always feels pretty bad. And here we see Chandra, Torch of Defiance really paying off as Brad was able to play Chandra plus 1 Chandra, get 2 mana, immediately Magma Spray the Rogue Refiner, and now he's got 2 threats out to William's nothing. So this is how you get ahead in the energy mirror.
5 down to 4, up to 7. Of course, Jensen is talking about his energy count as he plays out a Whirler Virtuoso.
And Whirler Virtuoso does a pretty good job of protecting Chandra. So the fact that Brad has one in play means that even though both players have dueling Thopters, the best answer to Whirler Virtuoso is just your own Whirler Virtuoso.
How does Brad want to approach this game here? You know, he's the one with Chandra. He's the one who has the advantage.
He's got a lot of legitimate plays here. He's not going to want to make mana off Chandra because his hand is just another Whirler Virtuoso, so he's unlikely to want, you know, he's not going to need the extra mana. If he's going to +1 Chandra, he could +1 Chandra in order to see his top card, maybe cast it, or deal 2 damage to William. He could also minus Chandra to take out William's Whirler Virtuoso, which is, you know, a solid start to establishing a better board presence.
Certainly forces the issue. Also, that Attune with Ether did get Brad up to 6 energy himself, giving him access to the 2 Thopters that Jensen can produce at the moment.
Yeah, and the second Whirler Virtuoso on hand will, in fact, let Brad hit up to 3 Thopters. And because of that, I don't think Brad feels threatened by William's Whirler Virtuoso.
Interesting. It looks like Brad's just going to plus Chandra, revealing a Harness Lightning, and cast it here, targeting the Whirler Virtuoso. Not much Huey can do from this point.
He can make 2 Thopters, but he knows those are matched by Brad's 2 Thopters. Huey can make a couple Thopters and then use for example, Harness Lightning to kill one of Brad's Thopters to deal one to Chandra, but that doesn't seem like a very productive line either.
Yeah, Brad says may as well get in there. Attacks for 2, passes the turn back over to Jensen, who really has his hands full here. Brad Nelson, and a stone cold expert with this deck as well.
Well, William has some nice options here. He's got Confiscation Coup, which can take Whirler Virtuoso and let William go up to 8 energy, so not enough to make an extra Thopter quite. He's got Commit to Memory, which he can cast on Brad's Chandra, so he knows Chandra's not going to be able to hit her ultimate, but committing Chandra after Brad gets to use Chandra again is just delaying the inevitable. It gives Brad still a lot of card advantage, and Huey doesn't have a firm answer for Chandra. So in an ideal world, what Willie would want to do is end up using Commit to Memory once he already has a board presence.
Does he have to think about the ultimate from Chandra in that equation?
He does. He's not going to want Chandra to ultimate, but Confiscation Coup is a good start because he knows he can just cast the Commit to Memory next turn. His lack of an island is hurting him, though. He has to, get pinged for 1 energy every turn by Ether Hub, or 2 energy this turn because of Confiscation Coup, in order to cast his blue spells.
Isn't he supposed to have the better mana of the 2?
You would think so. I mean, the extra swamp does hurt Brad's mana base, but in this particular case, William is lacking blue mana.
So Brad's made a Thopter. And there's the other one too. He did have 6 energy, so cashes that in for the 2 Thopters. He's still sitting on Chandra. And Brad's really been able to take over here with the help of Chandra. Torch of Defiance. He's trying his best to hand Jensen his first loss of the tournament.
And one of the things Brad is doing right now is also really punishing William's Essence Scatter, because Essence Scatter is a great card if you can afford to leave mana up. It counters a Glorybringer or a Rogue Refiner at an advantage. But Huey just has to tap out every turn to deal with what Brad already has, and that Essence Scatter is just kind of rotting it in William's hand, doing nothing.
That's a Rogue Refiner there for Nelson.
And Whirler Virtuoso number 2 for Brad is really just going to mean that he's sitting back behind his Chandras. In fact, Brad is so interested in ultimating Chandra that he's going to leave all his creatures back in the face of potential Glorybringers.
Look at this. Chandra is poised for the ultimate as well, so that's going to force Jensen's hand of using that commit to get rid of Chandra, else he's going to be facing down a very problematic emblem.
So what he can do is wait until Brad's draw step, after Brad has drawn his card for the turn, and then cast commit on Chandra, so to buy himself an additional turn. So here we go.
And that's exactly what he's going to do. Smart play here from Jensen. Remember, commit's going to put Chandra 1 from the top.
Just goes to 1. Goes 1 under, goes right
Right there we go.
One card on top of it.
And then the card on top, there we go.
And since Brad already drew for his turn, that means that Huey has 2 turns before Chandra comes back down, and hopefully he can rebuild his board in that time.
Now, what is he thinking, though, in terms of how that transaction went? Because it cost him a whole card to do that. It's going to cost Brad Nelson's draw step a turn from now, 2 turns from now, to draw that again. So that part's even, but did Brad get a ton of advantage in between off of Chandra?
He did. He's able to generate mana the turn he played Chandra, so she essentially cost him 3 mana because he still got to cast Magma Spray. Got +1 card because Brad flipped a Harness Lightning and cast it. So Brad certainly up on that exchange.
Okay. Yeah, Jensen, though, thinking in terms of being up on the exchange, he did cast Confiscation Coup, which took away a creature from Brad and gave it to Jensen, effectively a 2-for-1 for William.
And Brad did draw the Scarab God, which William is going to be able to Essence Scatter this turn.
Jensen may be tempted to just use one of his burn spells here. No, he's not going to.
He's certainly not going to tap out of Essence Scatter. And he has enough life that he can afford to pay some life for flexibility, even though he doesn't know if Brad's going to cast anything this turn.
Yeah.
Brad, well aware of Essence Scatter, he's just not going to play into it, it looks like.
Now that should prompt Jensen to consider using perhaps a Magma Spray
Yeah,
here, right?
likely to Magma Spray end of turn here.
And Brad certainly will have paid attention to that sequence
Right.
as well, right?
By doing it end of turn, William has signaled to Brad, yeah, maybe I've got Essence Scatter in my hand, and in fact he does. This game is fairly even. Brad has an advantage because of his life total and because he's essentially got one extra Thopter over William. And we know Brad's drawing a good card next turn in Chandra. But Essence Scatter's trading for the Scarab God. William has 2 removal spells in hand, which can kill Whirler Virtuoso and one other card if he wants to Magma Spray a Thopter or save it for a Rogue Refiner. It's not inconceivable that William cast Magma Spray on a Thopter token here. It's not particularly great value. He might kick things off by using Harness Lighting on the opposing Whirler Virtuoso.
He's going to Harness Lightning one of the Thopters. Well, if it's good enough for Harness Lightning, it's probably good enough for a Magma Spray as well. While the clock is completely dissipated here for Nelson. Still looks like he's in decent shape, but
he is. He's got a
hanging in there.
Chandra on top of his deck, and I think Brad is just convinced that William has Essence Scatter in hand. Otherwise, he would have cast Scarab God.
Yeah, he is fully playing around it at this point.
Well, Harness Lighting not a bad draw because it gives William the opportunity to make an extra Thopter at the very worst. He can threaten Chandra depending on how Brad plays this. Because if Brad draws Chandra next turn, plays Chandra, minus his Chandra to kill William's Whirler Virtuoso, William can make enough Thopters, especially with Harness Lightning, to kill Chandra.
Now, this is a crazy question, Luis, but is memory a possibility?
This is like
that would get rid of the Chandra.
It's the most last ditch of all plans.
Okay.
Because if William taps out to cast memory this turn and both players draw 7 new cards, Brad just gets first crack at playing all of his cards and will likely bury William here. William knows that Chandra is coming down, so he has to decide how best to react to that news.
So that would only be used in a situation where Jensen thought, I can never beat Chandra if he draws it and casts it here. I have to do this other play.
And I don't think we're quite at that point.
Players having a little chat here.
I wonder if Brad suggested that William cast memory here. I mean, maybe he will, but it seems like William is not quite that desperate yet. Wow, he's going for it.
He's going for it.
All right, this is exciting.
Okay, we get to see memory put on the stack, and that's really effective here because not only is it going to shuffle away that Chandra potentially that's on top of the library, but remember the Scarab God also in hand for Brad Nelson, so 2 of his better cards, though. Does look at 7 fresh ones, and he's going to have, what, 6 or 7 mana available as well, so that is a lot of risk that Jensen's taking on. But he knew he would be facing down Chandra, and his hand was Essence Scatter and Harness Lightning. He decided not to try to put up a fight there.
Oh yeah, never a dull moment over here.
Huh?
I said never a dull moment over here.
Hey, getting to 6-0 is not easy, Jensen. You're going to have to put up with some excitement here.
All right, I'm going to keep tracking this tournament of how many times we see memory get cast and that player win the game. So far, Reed has cast memory and has not won him the game.
Yeah, so 0 for 1 for memory.
Though I will admit that you also only cast memory when you're losing, so that does, that weights the odds.
So Jensen just wants to find as much action for next turn as possible here, and kind of cross his fingers that Brad doesn't just empty his hand of awesome cards.
Well, one thing going for Jensen is that besides Harness Lighting, there aren't that many instances in the deck, so Brad can't necessarily use all of his, 7 untapped lands here. He's going to be able to cast 1 of them, maybe. Brad's hand is not insanely good. He's got Long Tusk Cub, Servant of the Conduit, the Scarab God, Harness Lightning, and a second Long Tusk Cub. So he's going to be able to play a bunch of cards, but he's not necessarily going to be able to completely go off here.
Brad's going to attack with the Thopter, but Jensen has 6 energy, so he can make a Thopter or 2. It looks like he said, I'll make a Thopter and block. They traded. So what does Brad have this turn? How much damage can he inflict? Whoa! How about a pair of Long Tusk Cubs? Maybe 3 of them? What's the middle card? there?
Servant of the Conduit
Servant,
is his
okay.
last play here. And once again, Brad is going to play conservatively with Scarab God. Actually, since Brad has enough Ether Hubs out, he can wait to play Scarab God until he can also activate it once. And that'll give him a significant advantage, even if it does die to Magma Spray plus Harness Lightning, which is a good way to take care of the Scarab God permanently. Oh, William has his 1 confiscation coup back in his hand thanks to memory.
He already played it once this game.
He really wants to save it for the Scarab God here. If he can land a confiscation coup on the Scarab God, he's in really good shape.
These decks normally play 2 copies of Scarab God, is that correct?
True.
Okay, and is that what Jensen will be assuming here when he sits down across from Brad and sees that he's playing this version of the deck?
See, confiscation coup is such a trump against the Scarab God that if William is able to, he's just going to hold it and not cast it until the Scarab God comes out.
I see. That is his insurance plan against the Scarab God, a card that he has a very difficult time beating.
One side advantage of memory is there's no creatures in graveyards right now. So the Scarab God doesn't actually have anything to bring back anyway.
Look at that smile from Jensen. Of note here, Jensen, this is a local tournament for where he grew up as well. Jensen's from the Boston/New England area. I had a chance to meet his dad today. Really nice guy.
As did I, yeah. William's dad is awesome.
Also William, by the way. Turns out Huey, our Huey, 3rd in the lineup.
So unfortunately for Huey, 3rd of his name, he even if he lands confiscation coup on the Scarab God, Brad can Harness Lightning to essentially take it back.
Right. It would die, end up going to the graveyard and back to his hand.
Yeah, I believe so. Just check just to make sure, because it has changed control, but if it dies when it hits the graveyard, I believe it goes back to the owner's hand. Scarab God, one of the most heavily played cards in Standard.
Is that right?
Yeah, it will go back to Brad's hand regardless of who controls it when it dies. Huey does have a Magma Spray, though, to then prevent that play.
Yes, that is really interesting.
It is complicated here.
We have a game here, though, right? Like,
yeah, we've got a...
This actually is happening that post-memory, it didn't just end the game right on the spot.
No, it didn't.
So he's trying to decide how to block. We've noticed that Brad has 6 energy for these 2 Long Tusk Cubs, both of which are attacking it in the red zone.
And Long Tusk Cub gets a comparative advantage over Bristling Hydra in terms of how much it has to pay for a +1/+1 counter.
Yeah, it's got that good exchange rate going.
So currently,
at this rate, these are trades and death for one.
Currently, Brad's trading 2 Long Tusk Cubs and 2 energy for a Hydra.
That's a steep sell.
That is tough. William has Harness Lightning in hand. He's also got 8 energy. He can make his Hydra have 5 toughness. So it looks like Brad might pump the Cub that is blocked by Whirler Virtuoso at least. The problem is if Brad does that, his remaining Cub becomes a 4/4 at max, and that Hydra can become 5 toughness, and then the Hydra beats this attack. I don't know if Brad is going to end up regretting this attack, though Brad does have Harness Lightning in hand, which also acts as a ++1 counter for Long Tusk Cub.
That does. Jensen wants to respond here.
So he's going to Harness Lightning, targeting the one fighting the Whirler Virtuoso. And critically, if Brad doesn't respond at all, that puts William up to a 9th energy. He gets 3 energy, spends 2 of it on killing the Long Tusk Cub, goes up to 9. Now William's Hydra can get pumped twice.
That's happened here.
This is working out quite well for William.
Wow, Jensen really scrapping back after having to bite the bullet and cast memory from his graveyard.
And the problem here for Brad is if the first pump on the Hydra resolves, now it's hexproof, and William no longer has to worry about Harness Lightning the rest of the turn. So if Brad wants to cast Harness Lightning on Hydra, he has to do it now, but that of course doesn't do anything because William has enough energy to make it hexproof once again.
Yeah, it'd be trading a Harness Lightning for just 3 energy from Jensen. A tough sell indeed.
Oh, wow.
Wow. So that was just a beating there for Brad Nelson.
Brad traded 2 Long Tusk Cubs and 4 energy for a Harness Lightning, and Huey got an extra energy off that exchange, and he gets to keep the counter on the Hydra because it survived combat.
And there it is, the Scarab God. Now, Brad does have enough mana here to activate it.
He does. William is going to want a Confiscation Coup the Scarab God. Brad is likely going to use it to get Long Tusk Cub back.
That's the best he can do.
But then Brad can Harness Lightning the Scarab God after that.
Looks like Jensen can just play in a tune here for free, as we say. And he verbalized it. I'm going to Confiscation Coup the Scarab God.
Not words you want to hear.
And remember, that is the second time we've seen that Confiscation Coup in this game, even though Jensen's only playing 1. Oh, there we go.
I feel like the Scarab God's a little too important to just be confiscated by like some portside authorities.
Yeah. Hey, you, come with me.
Yeah.
Scarab God's like, okay,
Yeah.
what could go wrong here? So is this going to prompt Nelson to use the Scarab God in response? That's one of his options. No, he's going to go for that Harness Lightning play, which means he's not going to get the Long Tusk Cub because Jensen's going to say, I'd like to add on 2 additional damage here.
Brad doesn't have to spend as much energy to kill the Scarab God now, but it's not coming back.
Is there a reason why Jensen responded?
Yeah, because otherwise the Harness Lightning would just resolve.
He would do it for the full amount.
And then
He would
Scarab
be
God
dead.
would die.
Okay, so all this is really doing, though, is just saving Brad a couple of energy. But key to this entire interaction, the Scarab God's going to get exiled.
It's gone forever.
It will be gone forever. And while Jensen would have preferred to have one on his side, getting rid of one, he'll take it, because that thing just completely dominates the game if Brad gets to untap. So Brad only has to spend 3 or even energy on it, not 1 out of his energy pool there.
2 energy right now.
And now,
And look at this! Hydra's attacking for Jensen.
and Jensen's last card, another Harness Lightning.
Oh, man.
Brad's down to just lands in hand, plus whatever he drew for this turn. Another land.
Another land. Brad has to just be looking at this game like what
how did I lose this?
happened? I had 7 mana available after you cast a memory. And now he's just getting his head smashed in by this bristling Hydra.
There's very few answers to a Hydra once it starts going on offense.
Yeah, you can see that Jensen has 2 activations worth of energy there. And a Long Tusk Cub, well, it's a spell. At least he didn't draw a land, but that's certainly not high on his list.
So Brad can put together 7 points of power toughness, and the Hydra currently can be at 6 points max. So the Hydra does technically lose to Brad's side, or trades off for a lot of those creatures. But William again has that Harness Lightning in hand, so he's gonna really wreak havoc if Brad tries a triple block here.
Yeah, this this looks like a limited play here, right?
It does.
You got your big bomb. I'm going to go for the big block. I've got the removal spell, and that is how a limited game ends, and that might be how this one does too. Look at Brad. He's thinking about it.
I believe Brad's forced to do this, even though this is not going to end well for him. Brad, it's not getting better for him. It's not like that Hydra is getting smaller, or that if Huey has a removal spell, it's going to go away. So,
Jensen cannot order these quickly enough and just casually says, Harness Lightning. He's going to use up 3 of the energy to make the Hydra one bigger.
now Brad might make a Thopter token with his remaining 3 energy. Might be saving it too in case he draws a Long Tusk Cub or a Hydra. Not a whole lot he could do with that energy though.
Yeah, the token could buy him an extra turn with the Thopter.
Wow,
Wow,
that'll do it.
And that's it. William Jensen wins game 1, an improbable victory to say the least, but he has been on point all day, 6-0, and now he's 1 game away from finishing undefeated here in the first stretch of the Magic World Championship. We are going to be back with more Brad Nelson, William Huey Jensen, and more from the feature match after these messages.
Test your skill against your local store community and become store champion this December 30th through 31st. Everyone who plays gets a premium full art rare, with top finishers receiving a deck box featuring Rivals of Ixalan art. If you win the whole event, you'll get the title of store champion and an exclusive store champion playmat to commemorate your victory. Find a store championship near you at magic.wizards.com/storechamps. Want to play in the next Pro Tour? Qualifiers are happening this weekend on Magic Online. For more information, visit mtgo.com.
And welcome back to coverage here at the Magic World Championship. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. It is our pleasure to have you along as we wrap up the day here, as it turns out. This is round number 7. Here at the World Championship, we do only 7 rounds, unlike the 8 that we would be doing at the Pro Tour. It's a little bit smaller, given that there's 24 players in the field. Also, you will have just seen, for those of you coming along live, the records of the players. And you might be thinking, well, they're not doing that well. What ends up happening is, especially when one player runs away with it, is the records end up converging in the middle. So a record like 4-2 actually looks pretty good in this field, where if you were at the Pro Tour, you'd think, yeah, we're doing okay here, but here it's actually quite good. Let's take a look at Seth Manfield versus Eric Froelich. Ifro, we know, is on Ramanop Red. Manfield has sleeved up 4-color energy here. And what can you make of this board state here, Luis? I see a bristling Hydra versus a Hazret.
Well, when your opponent has Hazret, that was never good for you. Seth is potentially threatening lethal with the Hydra if he can generate a little bit more energy. So this is going to be a tight race here, but I can't quite tell how many cards Eric has in hand, because Hazret's value does fluctuate wildly depending on how many cards you've got. I assume Eric's going to be able to activate Hazret, make it so she can attack or block this turn. But if he feels like he has to leave her back, that does help. But I think Eric's in pretty good shape here.
Dude, nothing you say is ever.
Well, Manfield takes 2 there on end step, as Ifro just keeps throwing cards at him. He's drawn a mountain for the turn, so he can get it so that Hazret can attack here, which does actually represent lethal and would force a block from Manfield, though Eric at 7 life.
What I suspect is going to happen is Eric is just going to be content waiting with Hazret on defense and using her activated ability to chip away at Seth's life total. Because Seth isn't dead this turn, not even dead next turn, but after Eric gets 3 more shots with Hazret, Seth will die. And 4-color energy doesn't really have a good way of dealing with a 5-4 indestructible.
Yeah, if Eric were to attack here, it would be a pretty easy chump block from Seth Manfield, and he is only a couple of damage away from just killing Eric. And he's got one of them locked up, so basically 2 energy would kill Eric, and he doesn't want to take that risk.
And because Eric actually has a Braid in hand, if Seth drew, say, a Glorybringer and just goes for the kill, Eric can Braid the Rogue Refiner, block the Bristling Hydra, and then attack back with Hazoret for lethal. So I believe that Eric is pretty heavily advantaged from this position.
Yeah, Hazoret is a handful. When your game planner burn spells, it just doesn't work. And yeah, Manfield just passes a turn back again. Oh, here's a Braid though from Frolik, which could force potentially.
Yeah, Frolik might not be content just waiting here. He sees an opportunity to force a chump block. He's going to discard one of those mountains rather than play it, most likely. Put Seth to 4. So what could Seth have that would prevent him from dying to Hazoret? Hydra currently has 4 toughness. Well, Eric actually would take a little bit too much risk because a Harness Lightning would give Seth enough energy to make a 6 toughness Hydra, 7/6 Hydra, bounces off Hazoret, and then attacks back for lethal. Yeah. So Eric is likely going to play it safe and just pass the turn here.
Probably just says go again. This is a potentially close one down the stretch here.
Depends if he thinks Seth has Harness Lightning. Eric might just have a read here. Eric's an accomplished poker player, and as such, I think he's used to body language and tells. So it's possible that he just doesn't think the way Seth's even played this game. He has Harness Lightning, and he's just going to go for the highly advantageous play if Seth doesn't have it here.
And he is, in fact, hitting the red zone. 1 card left for Manfield, and he says, I don't think it's a Harness Lightning. And sure enough, Manfield's blocking.
Oh, wow.
And that's a chump block with the Bristling Hydra, about the best case scenario from Frolik's perspective. And now he has a lethal attacker for next turn.
Very heads-up play from Frolik. That was high risk, high reward, but if he really has the read, if he thinks that Seth does not have Harness Lightning, and maybe earlier in the game Seth would have had an opportunity to play a really good Harness Lightning and didn't, then this is a very good play from Frolik.
Good draw step here, though, for Manfield. He found himself a Rogue Refiner, which is another blocker. It doesn't solve the problem, of course. Well, Eric can just throw that mountain at Seth, force another chump block.
And then have lethal next turn without even attacking with Hazoret.
He's not even going to throw the mountain. Instead, it's going to be that Harsh Mentor. But this is a forced block once again. And it looks like Manfield says, well, I don't have any outs here. And that is going to be game 1 going to Eric Frolik over Seth Manfield. And that means that we can jump back up to our main table where on the left-hand side of your screen, that is William Huey Jensen. On the right, that's right, Brad Nelson. Jensen finds himself up a game over Brad here. 4-color energy for Brad, just 3 colors of energy for William Huey Jensen. But Jensen with an improbable comeback in that first game.
Brad missed his second land drop.
Oh boy. Oh no, he missed his land drop again. Jensen, there could be blood in the water here if he can cast a Bristling Hydra. He does, it's a Bristling Hydra, and Jensen all of a sudden is firmly in the driver's seat here to go 7-0 on day 1 at the World Championship, though there is a land now for Nelson. He's going to Harness Lightning away the Servant of the Conduit. Was the damage already done?
It was. The fact that Jensen gets out ahead with a Hydra and then gets to add it to it with like a Rogue Refiner or Whirler Virtuoso means that Brad is going to face a tremendous uphill battle here.
Well, that battle starts right now. He needs to find more lands off the top of the library. It looks like what he drew is an Attune with Ether, which will get him a second land, though it's a bit awkward for him here. He's going to go get a forest. He's doing a little shortcut here. He's going to go get a forest, and then he's going to tap his lands to play a Servant of the Conduit, which does give him a ray of hope if it can survive, though he is still under intense pressure here from Jensen.
Jensen needs very little to take this game, and in fact has more than that. He has Harness Lightning, he has Rogue Refiner, and he has Negate, so he can pretty much just dictate how the rest of this game is going to go. If he goes Rogue Refiner into Harness Lightning on the Servant of the Conduit and attacks for 7, potentially even 8, he might want to start using some of the counters on the Hydra. It's going to be hard to imagine what can get Brad back into this game.
Yeah, this one is all but in the books, and looks like he may consider using up one of those activations here, leaving himself still with a full 6 energy, 8 damage. That's a 1-turn clock now as the board sits. Nelson has to do something this turn, and that's going to do it. William Huey Jensen completes the sweep. He's 7-0 on day 1. Woo! That is hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we're used to the Pro Tour or a GP where there's a big field and there must be undefeated players after day 1. It's just how the math works out. That is not the case here. Jensen easily, you know, could be in the middle of the pack, but no, he has refused, in fact, to lose. And that means we get to jump back in on our back table, which is Josh Utter-Layton and Jerry Thompson. Now, they tested together, right?
They did, and they're playing essentially the same list. The blue-black control deck with Search for Azcanta as its main card advantage engine, Torrential Gearhulk, the Scarab God, a lot of heavy hitters. And, you know, this is eerily reminiscent of the game we saw against Shota Yasuoka, where Josh has 3 disallows. He's got Search for Azcanta. He's got Arguel's Bloodfast. He really is just, you know, he's got all the tools he needs. And even though Jerry has a lot of lands out too, the fact that Josh has both those enchantments in play means that he is ahead here.
Josh is a huge fan of Search for Azcanta. You see Jerry say, thumbs up, all right, you got it, to the hieroglyphic illumination, but he can't be happy about it.
And Field of Ruin key in this matchup as a way to destroy a non-basic land, in this case Azcanta, the Sunken Ruin.
Wow, our own Brian David Marshall was milling around in the feature match area, kind of checking out the matchups, and he said in game 1, they had 40+ lands in play between them. And that when Jerry won that game, he did win game 1, as you can see by our indicator, he had 1 card left in his deck.
Wow.
So really took it to the limit. And is this a duress now from Josh? It looks like it. So true control mirror happening between these two players. And when I think of control mirrors, Luis, I think of kind of turning the deck face up, right? And then just sort of putting things into groups, right? There's some number of hand disruption, there's some number of counter spells, there's some number of card draw / card selection cards, and then there's things that can finish the game. What about that last category for the matchup we have here?
There's just not that much that can actually close out the game. Torrential Gearhulk and the Scarab God are the cards capable of dealing damage, and there's a lot of answers to those cards. So it is possible to outcard the opponent with cards like Search for Azcanta or Arguel's Bloodfast, so where you don't play your threats until that you can protect them adequately. And I think that's what these players are going to try to do. Post-board, it gets a little bit easier because, again, both players bring in more targeted cards and more cards that are effective in the matchup. But in pre-board games, both players tend to have a lot more removal than they have threats, and that can lead to these kind of awkward games.
And Arguel's Bloodfast, that is just a card advantage engine? Is that all it is here?
It's, you know, something like pay 12 life, draw 6 cards over the course of a bunch of turns. Like, that's why Josh is at 10. There's no way Jerry did damage to him. Right. So Josh has already drawn 5 cards off the Bloodfast, and he might draw a couple more here.
Take a look at old Jerry T there, the Pro Tour champion himself. Looks like he's got a copy of Duress of his own.
And now you're going to see some amount of neither player flipping Search for Azcanta because of opposing Field of Ruin, and you just want to have it in play, improving your draw steps.
Of course, blue and black not so hot at getting rid of enchantment, so that will just sit there for a while. Though they would love to transform it if possible, right? I mean, it's so much more powerful for them, but you just lose it immediately. It's not worth it.
Josh burning through his life, using it as a resource as it was meant to be used.
To turn it into cards.
He's drawn 8 cards off this. He's gone down to 4 life. He doesn't have to flip the Bloodfast. It is optional. But, you know, once he's out of life, he actually does flip into a land that can, you know, tap for mana.
It does, yeah. It also sacrifices creatures to gain life equal to their toughness, though. I would be surprised if we saw that happen.
Well, it is actually somewhat relevant. So what it can do is he can flip it into the Temple of Aklazats, and if Jerry tries to use Vraska's Contempt on his Scarab God, he can protect it by sacrificing it.
Wow, that is tech. I love that. By the way, he just did. So we got Temple of Aklazats, and it looks like the duress put on the stack from Josh Hutter-Layton was enough to prompt a concession there from Jerry Thompson. I know for those of you who haven't watched that much Magic in your life, that looked a little weird, right? You just saw somebody scoop up their cards and open
at 20 life when the opponent was at 4. So what happened there was Jerry knew that because Josh was up so many cards, that he would eventually lose. Jerry would eventually lose because Josh was able to grind Jerry's resources down to so few that Josh would eventually pull ahead. But with 20 minutes left in the round, these players want to finish the match. They want these to come to a decisive game, decisive victory. They don't want to draw. A draw is extremely bad in an event like this. They each only get 1 match point instead of a full 3 for winning. So because Jerry was something probably like 5% to win that game, maybe less, he decided that it was way better for both of them if he would just concede that game and they can go to game 3 and actually just have time to finish game 3 on its own merits. These are also, by the way, teammates. You know, they tested together for this event. Certainly neither of them is interested in getting a draw here.
Right. How many times do you think they've played this matchup? I mean, is this the kind of thing where they would have sat together and battled this matchup out to really figure it out? Or is it more that you try to play against the things that you expect to face rather than the mirror?
They've tested the mirror. I know that they have done a decent amount of testing the mirror or against other torrential Gearhulk decks where you just know it goes to decking a lot in game 1 or very close to decking. And then in games 2 and 3, they tend to be finished by damage because people have a lot more effective cards for the matchup. But that game was close enough to a foregone conclusion that Jerry decided just to pack it in.
All right, well, let's take a look at Eric Froelich versus Seth Manfield. They're all tied up at a game apiece while Josh and Jerry finished their sideboarding and shuffling and all that. Looks like a decent start here for Froelich with the Lightning Strike to take down a Servant of the Conduit while hitting in with the Bomat Courier twice already.
Now, presumably Seth does have a spell to play this turn, and if he does and he kills the Bomat Courier, then not a whole lot of damage has been done.
Sunscorched Desert's going to take a little, just 1 additional damage. But this is the Bomat Courier once again getting in. Trigger goes on the stack. This is where Seth is deciding, well, when I like to use a removal spell, he pretty clearly has one. And he does in fact use one. It's going to be a Magma Spray, and you got to figure that Eric's just going to let that go since he has 3 or 4 cards in his hand. The Exile was still on the stack, so he needs to do that, though it's not particularly relevant.
Well, what if it was a good card?
Yeah. Good news for Eric. Equal chance it was good and not good. There's an Abrade to kill Carrie Zev. And Seth Manfield's done a good job of keeping this board clear and his life total high. If he can kind of start slamming cards like this, he casts a Bristling Hydra. He has 6 energy. It's pretty tough for Eric to get that thing dead, and it's going to be bigger than basically everything Eric does.
But Eric does have Hazoret in hand.
Too soon, yeah.
Hazoret's still not quite in a mode where she's able to attack or block. Eric does have 2 cards in hand, but there's just not much Seth can do about Hazoret. He's got, not a whole lot of options here.
Yeah, so he does have a clean attack here. He could even use some energy if he wanted to get in for more, but it looks like 4 is enough for Manfield. So he's going to knock Eric down to 16, but he's got to be nervous about Hazoret getting active next turn and just starting to crash into the red zone.
Wow.
Ooh,
So
this has got to be the best answer for it, though.
Yeah, Whirler Virtuoso is the actual answer for Hazoret because Seth doesn't have a way to kill an indestructible 5/4 in his entire deck, I don't believe. Even looking at a sideboard.
Now this does bring me back memories, though, to the game that we came and looked in on, where Eric decided just to sit back behind Hazoret, start activating her occasionally, maybe picking off a creature with a removal spell, and eventually turned the tables and started attacking. Is that what you would predict from this board state here, kind of as a snapshot?
The difference here is that Seth is at 18 life, so Eric has just so much work to do if he wants to deal 2 damage at a time. I mean, 9 activations of Hazoret, he's not going to have that much time. And also, 9 activation of Hazoret is 9 discarded cards. That means Eric just doesn't play a card for 6 or 7 turns. And that's going to be tough because Seth does start to put a clock on him with that Whirler Virtuoso.
Yeah, those 2 Thopters are now in the air. He decided to leave 1 activation of the Bristling Hydra back, but here we go. He's going to start chipping away, evens the life totals at 18 apiece, and he even has a follow-up play. Wow, another Bristling Hydra and another 3 energy. Things are starting to look pretty good for Manfield here.
He is well hydrated, and he's going to make sure that his Air Force continues attacking.
So Eric's going to get rid of a redundant mountain here, and also potentially set up Hazoret for blocking and attacking duty. Well, an on-crop crasher was his draw step.
And Eric can play on-cop crasher. That will make Hazoret good, but still he's in a tough spot because Seth has way too many blockers. Hazoret attacking is just not going to accomplish much, and I think Seth is reaching towards the Thopter dice here since energy will be converted into Thopters fairly quickly at this rate.
That's right. We're going to stay here on Seth Manfield versus Eric Froelich because I like the way this one's panning out. In the meantime, we're going to let Josh Utter-Layton and Jerry Thompson begin their match, as it's unlikely to end in a particularly quick fashion.
I can predict the first 6 or 7 turns, which is lands and duresses.
Yeah.
Maybe a card draw spell here or there.
Okay, so we'll let them do that. If you're more interested in the control mirror and how it pans out, just look in the upper right part of your screen and you'll see some lands hit the battlefield and maybe a duress or 2. In the meantime, though, we've got creatures and we've got a pretty cool little match going here between Eric Froelich and Seth Manfield. This is their game 3 as well. And this one looks like it's advantage to Seth at the moment, but you don't want to count Froelich out just yet. Energy is really flowing nicely, though, for Manfield.
I think we're getting pretty close to counting him out,
yeah,
actually.
the 4 Thopters, very tough to beat here.
That's called powering.
Looks like Harness Lightning is going to target the on-crop crasher here.
Jerry and Josh are having way more fun, I think.
Yeah, this sounds like a playtest session.
Jerry and Josh are really good friends. They actually team together for Team Grand Prix as well. So I expect their match, even at the World Championships, to be lighthearted, even if they're both still playing as tight a Magic as they can.
And look at this. Seth is willing to just throw away one of his Bristling Hydras to get in for a ton of extra damage. 6 extra damage in addition to the 4 in the air means that Eric's down to 4. And as you said a minute ago, he is just about done, and that's going to do it. Seth Manfield.
Was that game 3?
Picks up the game 3. Yeah, it was.
So he
indeed.
had a quick game 2 then.
That's right, and I'm assuming that Eric didn't really do much that game because yeah, we came back and that was about that. Manfield improves to 5-2, while Eric's going to have to settle for a 4-3 positive record heading into day number 2. Let's head back to Josh Utter-Layton and Jerry Thompson.
Good rally by Eric. He did start 0-2 in the draft portion, so he rattled off 4 wins in a row. In standard before losing his last, or 3 wins in a row in standard before losing his last round.
And make no mistake, he is very much in the thick of it at 4-3. He can come in and have a productive day. That same thing goes for Seth Manfield, of course, who's 5-2 and in pretty good shape coming out of day 1, all told. And it looks like there was a bit of a fight there over a search for Escanta, and Jerry won it.
So Jerry has an advantage here, which is that he hasn't missed a land drop yet. He has 8 lands in play. Josh has 6, so he's actually behind by 2 lands here. And that may sound like not a small amount, sound kind of trivial. It really isn't, though, because these players are going to be constrained on mana a lot more than they are anything else. So Jerry intentionally didn't play a land.
He just didn't play a land on purpose. So what does that tell Josh?
It conceals the fact that Jerry had that land in hand, which makes Josh think Jerry has all spells, and that Jerry just drew the land that turn. As it turns out, Jerry does have all spells, but it was still like a little bit of misinformation because Jerry didn't see himself tapping out.
Of course, this is the only this type of bluff you want to run against somebody like Josh Utter-Layton who's going to notice. Don't go to F&M and do it, and your opponent just, they don't even notice. Or maybe the best player at your shop.
So Jerry is actually gaining quite an advantage here because he's resolving his card draw spells. He's going to be able to hit more land drops, though. In this case, he actually is going to miss his first land drop unintentionally. And that means that Josh has these hands of like Torrential Gearhulk, Scarab God. They just can't really tap out for because he knows they're just going to get countered. Also note, Jerry's waiting on his Duresses. He's just not casting Duress because he knows the cards he's going to take with Duress are counter spells or removal spells, and he's not looking to fight right now. He's looking to just keep playing cards.
Yeah, this is a common practice when you have something that you really want to push through, because playing Duresses on the turn when you go for a big spell is so powerful because they only cost 1 mana and they invariably cost more mana to counter, and you can win. Oh, look at this. Josh is going for a Torrential Gearhulk right here, right now.
And this is the way that Jerry does get a little bit punished, because Jerry can fight over the Gearhulk, and I think he's going to. Josh is going to cast his own counterspell here potentially to use up more mana. But Josh can then maybe try to play Arguel's Bloodfast and see if he can resolve that in the face of Jerry maybe not having enough counters. But it looks like...
Was the Gearhulk bait in some ways? I mean, Josh just immediately was like, yeah, sure, Essence Scatter it, no problem, goes away.
Yeah, Josh doesn't care whether he resolves Gearhulk or not. He's just looking to spend 6 mana and cast his expensive spell and trade it for a card. Because Gearhulk, despite being one of the most powerful cards, is also one of the weakest cards when both players are just keeping all their mana untapped. Because if you have to spend 6 mana on a Gearhulk and your opponent only has to spend 2 or 3 mana to counter it, that's pretty inefficient for you. So Josh is really happy to just get these Gearhulks out of his hand so that his hand is all 2 and 3 mana cards, so he can play all of them in the same turn.
Now, what about winning the game, though? If he just throws 3 Gearhulks into counter spells, or in this case, a removal spell.
Eventually, he'll win the game with the Scarab God.
Okay,
He doesn't
that's
have
his game.
He doesn't have a ton of ways to win the game, but the Scarab God will eventually do it. Because one of the features of this matchup as well is that despite Duress being a very effective hand disruption card, there's no card that these players are playing that can get a Scarab God out of your hand, so you know it's safe there. You don't have to go for it until you have as much protection as you can stand. And Jerry, he's, again, very, very patient, not using his Duresses, and continuing to just play lands and pass the turn. But now that Josh has Arguel's Bloodfast out, I think that, again, that Jerry could have Duressed the Bloodfast. I think it's going to end up working out not quite as well, because what Jerry's been missing this entire game is a threat. He's got all Duresses, all Disallows, all lands, and now he finally drew a Gearhulk. Now we're going to see the Duress come out.
Yeah, and there it is. Duress, he wants to fight this fight. Josh has to decide, well, if you're just going to take it anyway, I'll just not pay the mana.
He'll give Jerry the information. He's not really worried about that.
And the information's not great for Jerry. That is 4 counter spells for that Gearhulk that Jerry drew. And Jerry fight that fight?
Josh is recovering from the stumbling on his 7th land. And now Josh has enough lands in play as well that he can really deploy his spells. So yeah, I think Josh now has the advantage because of that Bloodfast.
Yeah, that thing just represents, what, 6, 8 cards? 6 or 7 cards sitting on the table.
Up to 9 cards, potentially, and then it turns into a land. It still has utility.
So, take an Essence Scatter, the most efficient answer. Duress, and Josh says, yeah, sure.
I mean, Jerry already knows the information, so you might as well not tap your mana.
Take another Essence Scatter.
So Jerry's going after the more efficient answers, and so Jerry can cast Gearhulk, can cast 2 Disallows, so he can resolve a Gearhulk here, assuming Josh doesn't find something, but we'll see if he goes for it.
Maybe he wants to respond to the Hieroglyphic Illumination from Utter Leighton.
The problem is, after all of this, both players trade all their things, except Josh has Scarab God in hand and Bloodfast in play, so Jerry is behind quite a bit here.
He is, in fact, going to respond.
And see, this is working out very well, and part of the reason it's working out so well for Josh is we're fighting during Jerry's end step. Josh is going to get to untap and have all his mana up and kind of dictate how the rest of this game is going to progress.
And now they're going to have a bit of a disallow fight here.
But I think Josh is out of blue mana, or potentially not. No, that's a dual land. So
yeah,
we're going to trade off all our disallows.
Yeah, that's 2 for 2 on disallows, and that's going to let Torrential Gearhulk resolve. There's a Glimmer of Genius in the yard, and there's a lot riding on it here for Jerry Thompson.
You found a Scarab God.
Okay.
So Josh needs to find Vraska's Contempt. That's the card he's really interested in finding here. He
Didn't see one off of the hieroglyphic illumination.
But Josh also gets to play Scarab God and have... Well, it actually works out pretty well for Josh. He gets to play Scarab God, and because he has Torrential Gearhulk in his graveyard, he gets to have the activation of Scarab God to eternalize the Torrential Gearhulk and then replay a counterspell like a Disallow to stop Jerry's Scarab God.
That is disgusting.
And Josh is laying out all his mana, so he actually even has enough mana. He can duress to clear the path if he really wants to.
That is disgusting, really? He can just sit there and leave that up at instant speed, getting back to Torrential Gearhulks? Ugh.
Josh has to decide now whether he wants to cast duress. He doesn't know the cards that Jerry has because Jerry emptied his whole hand. And Jerry left one on top. And so Josh has to decide now, would Jerry have left a creature on top? Should I cast duress? I think it's pretty tough to not cast duress here. Oh, and he got a Vraska's Contempt.
Wow, he got a Vraska's Contempt, reveals that Jerry does have his own copy of the Scarab God as well.
But Josh can tap out for Scarab God now, and Jerry has to top deck here, because Jerry needs to top deck this turn, because this turn Josh has one counter spell up. He has Scarab God getting back Torrential Gearhulk as a counter spell. After this turn, Josh is going to have multiple counters up every single turn, and Jerry's just never going to be able to break through.
Here's Josh Layton, casts the Scarab God with that ominous mana available. He says go, and this is a huge draw step for Jerry. Oh, he finds a land off the top of his library. That's not what he wanted to see. Both of these players are sitting at 4-2 and looking to get that beautiful 5-2 record coming out of the day. 5-2 is ahead of the curve for top 4.
Yeah, and this team I think should be pretty happy coming into this round. Sam Black, Josh Layton, and Jerry Thompson were all 4-2.
And that's going to do it. Jerry Thompson says, "Let's go eat."
He's a smart guy. I like where his head's at.
Perhaps the best way to concede a game ever, and Josh Layton is going to take that one. Welcome back. Marshall Sutcliffe here with Luis Scott Vargas. That is going to do it for our time here in the booth. I want to thank you for joining us. We've got a little bit more, though, lined up for you here for the World Championship after these messages.